I'm Shannon Crabill, and I'm here to talk to you about an email playbook. And I will say, with just being at the Ask an Expert session, exactly more than 0 people asked me what an email playbook is. So hopefully I can really explain that and you all get something out of it. Firstly, I'm Shannon. I'm a senior email developer at T. Rowe Price. It's a financial company. We're based in Maryland. And some fun facts about me is I actually majored in graphic design. I worked in my school's print shop. I thought I'd be doing print forever, and then I graduated and people were like, so you do websites? I'm like, okay, I guess. And my first full-time job outside of college was doing email design at a local ESP. So I learned a lot there. I learned a lot about the hectic, painful parts of email and also the fun, interesting parts of email. I remember it being 2013, 2014 when the first Litmus Live or email design conference happened and being like, whoa, it's really cool that there is actual conference about this thing that I'm learning about and sort of struggling with. In 2016, I think that was my first time attending a tech conference ever, and it was Litmus Live, and it was also my first time speaking. So I'm really excited to be here, really excited to be back, and I hope we can all learn something really cool out of this. So enough about me. I want to talk about the problem that was presented about a year and a half ago. So the problem came from my digital agency lead at the time. So my digital agency lead, my boss, and then me. And they were getting feedback from marketers or content creators in our company that they wanted a guide that would help them send email better, but the email style guide that we had was too technical, which is fair because the email style guide was made for developers like me, designers, external agencies. They said it was not useful and that it was just too nitty-gritty about hex codes and font sizes and that sort of thing, which, again, like I said, is fair. They wanted something more like an email 101 guide, something that would show them how to send good email, best practices, strategy, and just sort of how we do that internally as a company. So in thinking about the problem, I was trying to think of a way to sort of sum up that problem in 1 or 2 lines. So it came to this for me. Speaking from the marketer or the content creator, I need to send X type of email, whether that's an invite, newsletter, product promotion, whatever. What are my options? So the what are my options part is really key here. So they wanted to know more about design, what they could do in our design system within the limitations of email, just best practices, but they didn't need to know the nitty-gritty. This was sort of perfect timing because around now, we were actually going through some big changes. We were moving from a mobile-friendly but static framework system to a fully responsive framework system. We were going from our digital brand had evolved in the past few years, so there were some changes in color and styling, that sort of thing. And we were moving away from a EPS, or email service provider, where we could upload individual HTML files to having pre-built modular design components. So we'd be able to do a little bit less with the code that we could now. So with all of this in mind and being told that marketers want to hear more about email, that was sort of a really cool moment as an email geek, but also really kind of intimidating. So we wanted to, if this was sort of our problem statement, anything that we do should mesh up with this in the end. I would say if you're doing this within your company, your problem statement might be totally different and that's fine. I would just say as long as what you're doing meets up or you try to meet up with whatever the ask is. So now that we have sort of a defined goal and direction, what does this look like? What is an email playbook? Like I said, a lot of people actually asked me this today, just before I jetted down here to get mic'd up, what is an email playbook? So the email playbook, the term came up as we were sort of workshopping the idea, what will this look like? What can we call it? And the sports analogy was lost on me, so I did just a quick Google of what a playbook is. And the definition is something like a playbook is a book of strategic plays, typically for football. So if you think strategy, email best practices, email strategy, email playbook kind of makes sense for what we're looking to do, right? It's about the strategy, about email as a whole, not necessarily a specific campaign. It's not about 2018 events or something like that. It's just about email as a whole within a company or organization or line of business. So I did do a little bit more Googling to see if other companies were doing anything like this, and to be honest, I didn't find very much. I found a few of those very specific examples like I mentioned, but nothing that was overarching to talk about an email playbook within a company or a channel. So with me, I was feeling a little bit lost with this project. I don't know how to make this work. So for me to think about what an email playbook is, I first thought about what an email playbook is not. So an email playbook is not a style guide. Like we said with the original ask here that an email style guide was too technical for marketers or content creators, I wanted to make sure we didn't go in that direction with this document. So while we wanted to inform them what was possible within our brand system, we also wanted to not get too specific. That's what a design system is for. So if that is what a playbook is not, what is an email playbook? An email playbook is a hub. It's a hub for best practices, resources, case studies, more, whatever else. Again, what an email playbook is for you might include some of these things, none of these things, or just a few of them. It will be totally different, whatever works for you. So now that you know what you want to do, you need to think about how you're going to go about this. So before I get into like the nitty-gritty, I want to stop and sort of talk about like why I think this is important. So if we think about designers and developers, like modular design systems, just design systems in general are very popular and like a really good toolkit for us to get our work done fast, efficiency, and staying on brand. So if we think about a marketer, their needs are a little bit different. They might be focused more on the goal of a campaign, like the why are they sending it, who are they sending it to, and what do they want to happen with that send. So if we could create something that was just as helpful to a marketer or content creator as a design system for us, that's pretty powerful, right? And again, the fact that marketers were asking us, the email geeks, for best practices and stats, like we should take that opportunity and run with it. So that's what an email playbook is in my scenario, and that's sort of like why you should care and why I think it's important. So now I've got you on board, let's talk about how to make one. So looking back over the past year and a half, I sort of saw this as 5 distinct phases into creating an email playbook: buy-in, discovery, build, socializing, and future-proofing. So the first one is buy-in. So as far as buy-in, I think that's the most important thing in doing a project like this. And if there's one takeaway you all would write down or tweet about, I hope this is it, because buy-in, I think, has made this project as successful as it is. With me, since the ask came from the top down, buy-in was already built in, and it also meant I got a few people from other teams assigned to help me work on this. I had a copywriter, I had a UX designer, I had a graphic designer, and I had some marketing friends that could help me make this happen. I would say if you were doing this internally, maybe you don't have that luxury, like maybe you have people that would be willing to help. So I would definitely say at least talk to your boss about it, talk to maybe your teammates, and get the word out there, because you might be surprised how many people want to help you create something like this. Oh, another point, even if you have a different structure, maybe you're doing like more of these roles than just like the email design and development, maybe you have coworkers that are SMEs in, let's say, reviewing stuff or just catching spelling errors that can help you make this like a nice, better thing. So, discovery. The best projects, I think, start with a brain dump. I'm a big fan of staying away from the computer as long as possible when I start a new project. So for us, it was just a matter of talking about this idea. What do we want to do? How can this look? What content do we need? What content do we already have? And just sort of workshopping the whole thing to see what would work. No joke, this was one of our first sketches. I think it was on like Sharpie and like a big sheet of paper in a conference room, but it works. It sort of got the concept out in a very simple lo-fi way. So as you can see, the larger example, I guess, on the left is what we wanted to do was have an email and then be able to point out specific sections within that email to say this is a hero image, this is this type of component, this is what it's called, there are some options, or to even say these components are fixed, that you can't change them, or these are flexible, that you can swap them in and out, or whatever might be relevant. So again, at this point, we're very lo-fi, iterative, not anywhere near a computer, Sharpies, and it was actually a nice change of pace to be working with Sharpies as opposed to code all day. So content audit, this was also really fun for me. What we did is we audited our existing emails, maybe like everything we sent in the past 3 or 6 months, and sort of just printed them all out, laid them out in a room, and started to see what trends were popping up. What is trends that are good, what trends that are kind of bad, and which are just sort of interesting. One of the things I noticed, sort of being a financial company, maybe it just comes with the territory, is that a lot of our emails are really, really long, like longer than I would ever want to read on my phone ever. So that's a point that I could use the email playbook to sort of talk about, like, hey, maybe more concise emails are more effective. Earlier today, they're talking about like UX for seniors, like the point, like clear and concise is what works with them. Like that's a really good point, that maybe clear and concise emails just work better overall. We can test that. We could also see from a design perspective what components we were using often, less often, where are there gaps, or where content could sort of move to be used in different ways within our email system. In laying all these emails out, we did start to see trends of like groups of content that we can sort of bucket them together to be able to present them in a way that's digestible. As opposed to having a booklet with like 500 email examples, what if we gave them a section that was just invites or just promotions or just re-engagement emails or something like that, so that it can easily flip to a section that's relevant without having to go through this big long thing to find what they need. And as far as categories, we made sure to note them and to get that feedback from the marketers to make sure we're all on the same page. Like what something I might call an invite, they might call a save to date, and if we're not on the same page, we're kind of missed the point here. We also had the idea to do quick hits or best practices, since they were asking for best practices and external stats. Wanted to include that. Weren't really sure how to include it just now, but we made note that we did want to do that moving forward. So I'm a big fan of not doing the same work twice if I can. So I'm the first person to see what is already existing that we can leverage or pull little bits from, just so that we have a starting point and aren't reinventing the wheel unnecessarily. Like I mentioned initially, we had an email style guide and did have some elements that we could pull from that were really helpful. We had sort of a framework example of these are your fixed elements, these are your flexible elements, and these are how you can rearrange them within the system. So that's something we could pull. I also had a cheat sheet that I made for my team that outlined the differences between our existing email template system and our responsive ADA compliant template system. Sort of from like a quality check, like just know that in this template system we don't use this color anymore or the fonts are different, just so we are all on the same page there. From a design perspective, I asked my designer, like, what other internal documents do we have that we can leverage from like a layout or design perspective? Like, I don't see a lot of the internal documents that go around, but they might, and they might have something that they've done previously that they want to leverage, or that they just like the layout of, and we can repurpose it. Another point I want to make here is that if you're talking to your marketers, you might find that someone else has started a project like this, that you can reuse some of what they've done or tag team to create a bigger, better thing. Storyboarding was a lot of fun. I think like the UX part of my brain really enjoyed this. So we knew we had the pieces of content, we knew what we wanted to talk about, and we were sort of thinking like, what's the format, what's the flow, what will this look like? Like how will the person use this document, whatever it ends up being? So this was another one of our sketches, big sticky pad in a conference room post-its and just sort of sketching out rough ideas, email playbook outline. We were thinking we definitely wanted this to be easy to use, not something that required like explaining or a lot of like friction there. So we thought about sort of the user journey. It's like, okay, you're starting here. We want to have sort of the statement like why this is for you or why this can help you do better email. Sort of our artist statement, then table of contents, and then breaking it down by content type. We had the idea to do a sort of like landing page, sort of page or square number 4 there, that would say like what type of email are you looking to send, what's the main messaging here, are you looking to like drive an action, are you looking to get people to buy something, whatever makes sense for you, might be a good idea to put them there and that they can then jump to that section later. I thought of this document as like they might go through it all the way once, but after that they're just going to refer to like a very small portion of it to see what they need to do for that specific campaign. So, build. For some background, this was like a side of desk project with like kind of like it's internal, there's no real deadline, but we need it, but like not right away, so whatever. So I would say we worked on it maybe a few hours every week for a few months at this point when we got to the build point. So copy, design, strategy equals playbook. I was sort of taking that strategy role. Since I was the resident email geek, it was up to me to sort of gather those resources, which I can do in like 5 minutes, and then distill them, sort of outline the content that I wanted to have, and then pass it to my copywriter to sort of make it business appropriate. And I think that was really helpful for me because I know what to say, I just don't know if I could say it in a way that would be helpful for like other marketers or content creators. They would have more insight on that and way more experience writing content. From a design perspective, it was more of, this is what I'm looking to do. Can we do this, and is it relatively easy lift or to maintain? Like I didn't want something that would be difficult because then it's not going to get updated, but I did want something that looked good and was useful, and I didn't want to cause too much extra work on anyone's behalf. If you were doing this internally, maybe it's worth talking about what format is the best, you know, what tools do you want to use, what tools do you have, and going from there. So a few months into the project, probably fall of last year at this point, I'll be perfectly honest, and the imposter syndrome hit really, really hard for me. I really started to second guess myself in this project. I was thinking, am I going about this the right way? Am I meeting the need? Am I the right person to be assigned to this? I know email, but I don't know strategy at all. So I really was starting to second guess myself, and I needed to validate the idea because I wanted to course correct now as opposed to, let's say, 6 months down the line when it's done and someone's like, nope, not helpful, sorry, start over. So if anyone has been involved in lean or agile or anything like that, this might start to sound a little bit familiar, the idea of failing fast and sooner as opposed to at the very end of the process. So what we did was we built out one of those sections. Started from the beginning, intro, built out, let's say, the invite section, design and everything and copy, and we wanted to present it to our marketers to get some feedback. So talk to the people who are going to be using this. Talking on the phone is my least favorite thing, but it was necessary for this job to get the feedback that I needed. I started with a few that I knew very closely, that I had worked with for years, and that I knew would give me good feedback, positive, negative, neutral, because I really wanted to hear, if I wanted to hear this isn't working, I would rather hear it now as opposed to 6 months down the line. I had some questions that came up as we were working on this project, are these content types working, etc. But someone gave me the idea to try using an empathy map to get other information. So if you've never seen an empathy map, this is an example of what it looks like. It'll vary the sections and their names, but for the most part, it's used in user experience and creating user personas. So the idea of what is someone feeling, thinking, hearing, seeing, pain points, what are their goals? And for me, this was a really helpful framework to sort of give me a script when I was talking to someone to get feedback in addition to what other questions that I had. What I did, because I didn't want this to be a very heavy ask on anyone's time because we're all busy, I want to value someone's time, I just asked to schedule a 20-minute WebEx call with some marketing friends of mine to get feedback on this. Shared it via WebEx, got a lot of good feedback, some of it conflicting from different people, but overall the idea was validated. Thumbs up, good to go. And I've got a lot of ideas for future improvements. Also did the same with our department lead to verify, hey, does this match what you heard initially? Yeah, it is. Okay, we're good to keep going. I was starting to feel a lot better. So finish it. It may seem like this happened in really rapid succession, but it really was, I think at this point we were trying to finish it up. It was started July of last year, went to, sort of died off in the holiday season, busy season, and then finished it up in February, March, was when I went into hyperdrive to finish it. Went through copy revisions, design revisions, had a lot of trouble with my assigned resources getting assigned to other projects, so I'd have to get a new copywriter, new designer, which did cause some delays, but you have to roll with it. You have to work with what you have. Socializing. So that's where I am right now. I'm not great about humble bragging or talking about the things I work on, but I really tried to do this with this project. After all, a lot of time and energy and effort from other people went into it, so I didn't want to just sit on a server somewhere and not get any attention. So I started talking to the people who I interviewed for the empathy map. Hey, Emily, is there 10 minutes I can get in front of you and your team to show this off? I think it might be beneficial to you all. And so far, no one has said no, which has been great. And even people have recommended other groups to talk to share this out that I didn't think of initially. Like, hey, have you talked to so-and-so's agile team? They're doing something with email. Okay, cool. They had me over for 20 or 30 minutes. Or maybe you should talk to that marketing group. They would really benefit from this. Like I said, no one has said no so far, and it's been really cool. If you were doing this internally, I could see socializing this as maybe being a lunch and learn, maybe an all hands, maybe if you have a yearly, everyone in sales gets together or something like that, or a digital meetup, maybe this is something you could share then. I'd also see it as a good opportunity to do it with onboarding for new marketers. Maybe it's 5 or 10, 15 minutes to say, let's go through this thing. This is a resource that will help you. Let me know if you have any questions, sort of starting that dialogue. So again, don't let this collect dust on a shelf or dust on a server, however you want to look at it. The point I'm trying to make is if no one can find this, if no one can find this, then it's not useful, right? So I would highly recommend this living on some kind of central location, whether that's an intranet site. If you do have a design system, maybe it lives with that just so people can see both. Somewhere where anyone can get to it in any way, shape, or form. For us, it lives sort of in our intranet site, and the PDF that we have is the URL will always be the same. I'll just overwrite it each time. And yeah, I could see this as something that maybe gets moved to our brand site over time. I just wanted to have something out there, even if it's not the long-term solution for it. So speaking of socializing and humble bragging, the response to this has been really good so far. I haven't gotten any negative feedback. I've shared this with about 5 teams internally to date, and we're a pretty big company, so I think that's like a win to get on anyone's calendar. And this has sparked a secondary life with copywriting groups, designers, external agencies that I didn't think about before. One of my to-dos when I get back either this week or next week is to schedule time with the designers and the copywriters to share this out so that they know the limitations of email and maybe can see it from like a brand strategy perspective or see what our marketers are also seeing. So, future-proofing. This will be a living document, and that's okay. I realized around when I was doing the empathy maps that this would like never be final, and that was okay. I got a lot of really good feedback, like I said. Some people were like, it'd be cool if there were videos related to this talking about email, or if there was this and that, and I'm like, maybe someday, maybe not right now, but those are really good points. So the point I'm trying to make is like your brand will probably change over time. Digital is always evolving. The email landscape will definitely change, and your recipient behaviors will likely change too. And ultimately, we want to send emails that our recipients are going to love and open and click. So speaking of Agile, I think this is a good opportunity to note that this is something you should definitely continually see improve over time. And I'm a little bit of a bullet journal nerd. I don't know if there's anyone else here that does that, but I just have a page of like Playbook updates that I want to make over time, and I'll just check them off as I get to it. So I've been telling anyone that will listen for more than like 5 seconds that this exists, that I hope it's useful, and if you have any feedback, just let me know. I just kind of want to hear it all at this point. So now that I've taken you on this journey of getting this ask, getting buy-in, sort of not sure how to approach it, switching out designers, copywriters, and all of that, I wanted to share some of the lessons learned I have over this past 1.5 years with working on this project. So I wish I had a more beta-y beta. I would consider what I published about a month ago as a beta. Like I said, it's never going to be final, so maybe it's a permanent beta. But I wish I had done betas earlier in the process. So like I talked about doing an empathy map, I wish I had done that maybe way sooner than I initially did. I wish I had done more of the content, maybe scrap design, scrap it running through copywriting, but just raw. This is what I have, work with it, maybe get someone to volunteer to use that as a guide through an actual campaign end to end and gotten feedback that way. I think that would be really valuable, but hindsight's 2020. If I had to do this again, I'd probably try to go this route. Another thing that I learned that was really eye-opening for me is that the consultative approach is a good thing. When I say consultative approach, I mean it's less of taking this content, shoehorning it into a template or component and moving it on, but really taking a step back for a second to think about, is there a better way to rearrange this? Maybe there are components that could work better. What is the end experience for the user? Going back to the example of really long emails, I can't influence necessarily how long content is, but maybe I can make suggestions on how to better rearrange it. Maybe instead of a very long sidebar, there's a full width call out section instead. So that's been very eye-opening for me. It's made the work feel less churn and burn and more of I can do like little things to sort of push the needle towards better email. So far, no one has like rejected an idea that I've had or suggested I made, which is really cool. And I've also empowered my teammates to do the same thing. So even our like junior people, newer people on the team feel empowered to make suggestions to improve the experience or rearrange content. And it helps establish us as experts. Our marketers trust us, and it's really opened other conversations I probably wouldn't have thought to have a year ago or 6 months ago. For example, we have one campaign that's quarterly that is probably the longest email I've ever seen in my entire life. But the marketer was sort of recently assigned to it and was really receptive to some ideas I threw back and forth. And I'm like, hey, do you want to maybe talk about revising this for Q4? Sure, let's set up time. It was that easy. So I feel really empowered to try new things and less anxious about making suggestions and talking to people internally. By the way, it's almost Halloween. So as I'm talking about all of this, I want you all to think. if there is one friction point between development and design and marketing or content creation, whatever that looks like for you, what is it? And how can you potentially solve for it using documentation? If you don't know if there's a friction point, maybe start by asking your marketing team or asking other people on your development teams, like, what's a friction point? Where can we sort of start to solve for things? So to sort of sum this up, I was actually sitting in the back of this room earlier and listening to the session about modular design, thinking like, we're doing that, that's really great. And I was remembering a quote/tweet from a conference I went to in May in New York. And a developer, she was talking about debugging and she had a hellish experience with that. But one thing she said, and I'm trying not to butcher the quote, was that you are worth your weight in gold as a developer if you can write and maintain documentation, because most developers don't. So again, the point I'm trying to make is that an email playbook can be a really good platform to sort of bridge the gap between design and development, because ultimately we all want to send really good emails and be really, be really good senders and sort of take pride in the space we have in recipients' inboxes. So that's all I have. You can access my slide at shannon.crabill/litmuslive in addition to the link that Justine mentioned earlier. You can also find me on Twitter, Shannon_Crabill on Twitter. And if you wanted to email me about this, you can email me at Shannon_Crabill@troprice.com. All of those links and contact info are at the URL here. I'll also be at the Ask an Expert session tomorrow, since I had to run out a little bit earlier today, if you want to talk more shop about this. But I hope this was helpful and that you're thinking about what to do when you get home tomorrow after this conference. Thank you.